rhyme out of the piece. And this piece, as Oscar Brown Jr. is considered by some to be the father of rap. Now let us investigate what that is. This, in this instance, then becomes an integral cultural thing. The piece I'm going to do for you has its own title, so I'm going to stand and do it for you now. I'm going to let you get settled right there, and then I'm going to jump into this piece by Oscar Brown Jr. If I am not mistaken, I once read, back during that short spell I spent in school, wherever slave set free for slaving was supposed to get 40 acres and a mule. Now, ain't no telling how much work was done by my ancestors under slavery's rule. But sure as hell, the totals got to run at least 40 acres and a mule. Now, I'm not saying this to see folks sweat. I am not bitter, neither am I cruel. But ain't nobody paid for slavery yet about my 40 acres and my mule. See, we had a promise, and it was taken back. And when we hollered, it was, hush, be cool. But me, I'm acting rowdy, hot, and black. I want my 40 acres and my mule. Now, don't tell me not to get myself upset. Don't tell me that I am acting like I'm some sort of a ghoul. Just answer quietly. When do I get my goddamn 40 acres and my mule? No thanks, I will take my own self out to lunch. No thanks, I will dig my own swimming pool and lay and play around with my own bunch if I gets my 40 acres and my mule. See, interest got to go on just like the rent. Now, I might be crazy, but I ain't no fool. 100 years of debt at 10% per year, per 40 acres, per mule. Now add that up. Ooh-wee! No wonder y'all call great-grandma a jewel. Add that up, call the whole thing square. Yes, Lordy, 40 acres and a mule. Now, this next song is also written by Oscar Brown Jr., and it is the hope of every kid ever born, and it just defines color. Brown baby, as you grow up, I want you to drink from the planting cup. I want you to stand up tall and proud. I want you to speak up clear and loud. Oh, you little brown baby, brown baby. want you to go with your head, hold your head up high. I want you to live by the justice code. I want you to walk down freedom's road, oh, you little brown baby. Sleeping, lie away here in my arms, while your daddy and your mama protect you and keep you safe from harm. Oh, you little brown baby. Me glad you will have things I have never had. When out of men's hearts all hate is held, you're gonna live in a better world, brown baby. You little brown baby. Thank you very much.
In the sanctuary of learning, minds and space merge in a tranquil setting. Glass, air, light, and space for intellects to grow, that blossom seeds of knowledge, unfolding in a contemplative world of books, reading, and information, sturdy, steady, and strong, creating success one student at a time. Medgar Evers College. Come and learn.
Join us for our annual summer trip to ancient Egypt, July 24th to August 7th, 2004. This trip includes a 4-day, 5-star luxury cruise up the Nile, luxury hotels, and shopping. We'll visit the pyramids and the Sphinx, the temples at Abu Simbel, the Valley of the Kings and Queens, and much more. Our tour leader is Dr. Clinton Crawford. For more information, call 718-756-8904 or visit www.sankofaworldpublishers.com.
I would like to welcome all of you to this evening presidential lecture series. And the presidential lecture series has the history of inviting a broad range of highly accomplished men and women from the professional, academic, artistic, and political worlds to dialogue with the Medgar Evers College community on issues of historical and contemporary importance. This is an added benefit that you, the students at MEDGA, are receiving. It is not the case in many institutions that you get the opportunity to hear from some of the most accomplished individuals in this nation, people who have done so much to make a difference in the lives of so many. It is my pleasure for us to welcome Mr. Noel Hankin as our guest lecturer, and you will hear much more from him. It is indeed a singular honor for me to introduce to some and present to others our guest lecturer for this evening presidential lecture series, Mr. Noel Hankin, who is Executive Vice President of Multicultural Marketing, Shiflin and Somerset. Mr. Hankin joined Shiflin and Somerset Company in July 1997 as Vice President of Corporate Affairs. In July 2003, he was appointed Senior Vice President, Multicultural Initiatives, a new department that is responsible for community relations and leading the company's efforts in focusing on multicultural consumer segment opportunities. Mr. Hankin worked at Miller Brewing Company starting in 1986 as brand manager, Miller Lite. He was promoted to category manager, then director of corporate relations. Mr. Hankin began his career in the account management department at Young and Rubicon. He has had extensive management experience. He is a man who is concerned about education. He is a man who is concerned about helping his community. He has been a major mover in organizations such as the Thurgood Marshall Scholarship Fund, being able to secure major appropriations and grants from his company. He is a man who is committed to ensuring that people of African descent get an opportunity through education so that they can become a part of the successful generation in our community. He is deeply committed to Medgar Evers College. He has been a great champion of each of our gala celebrations that we have done on an annual basis. I don't know if we would have been as successful were it not for this great man, this great human being. And students, you need to know that here is a person of African descent who has risen to the pinnacle of corporate America. And he has done it with class, with dignity. And he has not forgotten from whence he has come. In his bio, you can see that he is a graduate of Queens College, one of our sister institutions within the City University of New York. He has a certificate from the Walton Business School, one of the best business schools in this country. with all of that he has achieved, he continues to be concerned about the least of those in our society. And it has been our delight that Mr. Hankin consented to be the lecturer for this evening. I don't know, but I don't believe that Mr. Hankin was born with a silver spoon in his mouth. I just believe that he knew where he was going, what he needed to accomplish, and he also knew that education was a vehicle that would allow him to realize his dream. It is then my pleasure and honor to present to some and to introduce to others a distinguished leader in the corporate field, a man of great dignity and commitment to education, my friend, the distinguished Mr. Noel Hankin.
Thank you so much, Dr. Jackson. I'm extremely proud to be here tonight to be a part of this impressive presidential lecture series. I've seen some of the names of others that you've had up here. I want to pay special respect to Dr. Alvin Hippolyte for helping to organize my presence here, and a special thank you to Kalima Pryforce for all that he did with wonderful flyers. I think he probably helped fill most of the seats that are here filled tonight. So thank you very much, Kalima. I want to start my remarks by just telling you a little bit about how I got into advertising in the first place as I fiddle with this, because I do have a few slides I want to show you. Let's see, went all the way back here. I grew up in New York City and went to public schools and went to Queens College, as you heard. And interestingly, I had no awareness of advertising as a possible industry till well after I graduated from college. Okay? I had a vision of doing something in sociology, working with people to help people, and I got a job with the Public Health Service when I graduated, and I found that this was a bureaucratic environment that promoted people based on how long they were there rather than how good they were, and I felt I'd like to compete. And I was a little apprehensive about the business world. It was scary to me back then. This is a long time ago. But I had a friend who worked for an ad agency, and he introduced me to one of his senior management people. And he said to them, I have a friend who's interested in considering going into advertising. Would you speak with him? And back then, the word networking didn't even exist, but that's what I was doing. I was networking through a friend who had kind of a low-level job in an ad agency. I met the top guy, and I spent time with him, and instead of him interviewing me, I interviewed him. And I found out what I should read, what I should do, the names of people, other people I should talk to, and through that, I wound up getting a job with the largest ad agency in the country, Young and Rubicam. That was my first corporate job. First day on the job, I realized that this is an industry filled with jargon. I had no idea what they were talking about. Mechanicals, storyboards, you know, I didn't know these terms, and it was kind of scary. Layouts, you know, they had prop-ups and cutouts and rough cuts and kinescopes. They don't even have kinescopes anymore. But the first day on the job, I was supposed to take over this guy's position. He got promoted. It was a traffic position. He was promoted from print traffic to TV traffic. He spent the whole day learning his new job. And around 4:30, he spent some time with me. Now, here I am thinking the whole day he's going to spend with me teaching me my new job, but at 4:30 he comes around. And around 5:15 he gets up to leave. So I'm a little nervous because I have no clue, and I didn't want to mess up my first day. So he starts to leave. I put my hand on his shoulder and said, "Where are you going?" He said, "I'm leaving, I'm going home." I said, "No, you're not." So he pushed my hand off his shoulder. Well, I couldn't help myself. I just came around with the other hand and hit him in the jaw. Now, he was a real big guy. He was beefy, and he didn't go down. And I was a skinny kid then. So what I did was I grabbed him, and I wrestled him to the ground. Chairs flying all over the place. It was a big mess in the office. And anyway, a couple guys came over, broke up the fight, and I figured, well, this is the end of my career in advertising one day. I went into the head of the department's office the next morning, and I said to him, I got into a fight last night, and I threw the first punch, but let me explain why. And I told him the whole story. He made him come in, the other guy, shake my hand, and then he assigned someone else to train me. And so I survived. And I survived because I got in early that second day and told my story first. That's what happened. There's a lesson there. Now, I want to tell you about advertising because it's such a powerful influence in our society. It reflects society, actually. And advertising, when it's created by those who create the advertising, put it together based on how they perceive the world to be and how they perceive society to be. The first ad agency in this country was formed in 1841, and African Americans were immediately portrayed in a negative light. 1841, that's before the end of the Civil War, right? After the war, African Americans continued to be featured in a very harsh manner. Blacks were figures of derision and humor. Blacks were frequently portrayed as obese, servile, happy, childlike, and as creatures who loved to eat watermelon and dance. It was very negative, and there was no recourse, no way to stop that from happening. Julian Bond, chairman of the NAACP, said that for many whites, and this is a quote, often who you are not defines who you are. In other words, whites depicted us in a way that they could feel they were superior to us. They depicted us in a negative way. Often who you are not defines who you are, okay? So by depicting blacks with broad smiles, even well-intentioned and religious white people believed that Jim Crow laws and racial discrimination were okay because blacks were by and large happy and accepting of their inferior position and subservient role in society. That's absolutely not true, of course, and I got to tell you, there were a lot of African Americans who stood up and spoke up against that mistreatment and spoke for equal treatment. And you know a lot of the names. Many of them came from the Caribbean, quite frankly. I was born in Jamaica, and I figured I'd mention that because I know a lot of you are from the Caribbean. And you should feel very proud about the role many Caribbeans played during that time frame.
I don't want to eat.
Come on, just one bite.
I don't like it.
Child, why are you sick? We have created great institutions for you. The HMO, the PPO, managed care networks, supplemental expanded coverage. You are lucky to be born in America, child. Why are you sick?
I want to show you some of the early ads that were created and how it showed African Americans in a negative way. We were featured in ads that focused on cleaning and food, gold dust washing powder, Longwood Plantations, pure syrup. Here's Mammy brand of oranges and Uncle Remus syrup. It goes on and on. But perhaps the most enduring brand from that period, which is still around today. Take that one out. Aunt Jemima. Aunt Jemima. She was a real woman. Her name was Nancy Green. Aunt Jemima was not only the first black person in an ad, she was the first living trademark in the advertising world. They trademarked her. Nancy Green, the woman who portrayed Aunt Jemima, was born a slave in 1834. She was discovered in Chicago in 1893, so she was 61 by that time, where she was hired to promote pancakes at a food exposition. So here they are in Chicago. Thousands of people gathered around to taste her pancakes. So many thousands, they had to call the police to control the crowd. And, you know, it's kind of feeds into the mystique, if you will, of African Americans in the kitchen, because we always had a reputation for knowing how to cook. But here's the real deal. Whites were so accustomed to having free black labor in the kitchen during slavery that products like Aunt Jemima was the next best thing. Some called it slave in a box. After all, it was a powder that had a self-rising aspect to it. You just mix it with milk or water, and you were good to go. This is the next round of products that came out were all along the same line, convenience-oriented. No more slaves in the kitchen, so you got to make the food easier to prepare for the white folks. This was the birth of convenience food. This is where it all started. After slavery, it continued. You have Uncle Ben's with his line of food, which is still out today also, because it saves time. Here's Uncle Ben with a woman. Now, you see what he is? He's in the kitchen, giving it to a maid, who's then going to bring it to the table to serve it. Okay? What used to take a substantial time took just a few minutes. Slave in a box. Here's something that you may have heard of, but you may not have seen. Here are two white guys from Chicago. They were Amos and Andy on the radio. To this day, the longest playing radio program ever. It ran from 1928 into the 1950s. That's a pretty long time. These two white guys made personal appearances also. They dressed up in blackface. He's black, the guy on the far right. He's a white guy with blackface, rather. They're not black folks. They're dressing up to look like black folks. What they did was they mimicked the worst aspects that they could think of for black folks and tried to make black folks look dim-witted and reckless. Here's how they looked when the blackface was complete. The real Amos and Andy wound up becoming a television show, but it only ran for 2 years. The reason why is a lot of folks in the black community objected to this very negative, dim-witted style of humor. It portrayed African Americans in a very negative way. The NAACP didn't want to have it on air, and so they protested. But the real reason why it was pulled off the air after 2 years, they couldn't get any advertisers. Nobody wanted to advertise on an all-black show. This was the first all-black show. I think, if my memory serves me correctly, the next all-black show was Bill Cosby, some 20-something years later. This was the first one, and then Bill Cosby, much different all-black cast with Bill Cosby, wasn't it? But this one, Amos and Andy, have you ever seen this picture before? Have you seen these people before in Amos and Andy? Any of you heard of Amos and Andy? Only a few of you, okay. You know what it did? It helped to perpetuate a stereotype of what black folks were all about. I want to talk about Kentucky Fried Chicken. I want to make a comment about Kentucky Fried Chicken. In 1939, the Colonel gave the world its first taste of Kentucky Fried Chicken, although that's what some people think. It really was, according to several sources, a black woman who had that recipe. It was a black woman who had the recipe. It was widely believed that he got it from a black woman. There were a lot of perceptions of the mysterious African-American cooking secrets that were going on. That's why the Colonel used that as a selling tool. He called it his secret recipe. Well, we know it wasn't a secret. It was a secret that he got from African Americans. In 1949, I think it was, Ebony came out with their very first issue. And they had a difficult time getting advertisers at first. It's some more KFC. But one of the first ads that they ran, written by an African American ad agency, was this one. It wasn't the first, it was one of the first. And there's a series of other ads. I'm going to show you several of them. You see this one has a black man. What's interesting here is, this is the early 70s actually. It's a Lincoln Continental. So this was a breakthrough ad because back then not too many advertisers believed black folks had the money to buy a Lincoln Continental. But what was happening, those of you who were around in the 1970s, Cadillacs were the rage. So here comes Lincoln trying to get some of that business. And you know who was buying a lot of those Cadillacs? Even though they might have been used, it was black folks. Here's some other ads that were done and that ran in ebony in the early years by black-owned ad agencies. Miss Clairol, you see a very positive image there. Does she or doesn't she? Afro Sheen, obviously that's just for black folks. Ashaway. Now, white folks get Ash, but Ashaway was before Cheeseboro Ponds. And of course, McDonald's. She deserves a break today. This was the early years of that famous campaign, and to this day, we support McDonald's. Avon. It's two black women, by the way. But I showed you this ad because I thought it was remarkable in one sense. I'm old enough to remember when I was in advertising, they didn't show light-skinned models. When they showed black people, they wanted them to look black to everybody. Unmistakable and clearly black. And so this was kind of breakthrough because for this time frame, it was rather rare to have such a light-skinned black model. Today, you see all kinds of shades. You can't tell what some of them are. They still favor the dark ones, she's saying over there. Yeah, you see the ads yourself. You make your own judgment. You can see the ads. I'll tell you what the shame of it is. There are only a handful of black-owned ad agencies today. Only a handful. And if you look at the white-owned ad agencies, there are only a handful of us who are working there, less than 5%. Only a handful of us. So who's creating the images that's selling brands to us and to the rest of the country? Here's a Pepsi-Cola ad. You've got a lot to live. Pepsi's got a lot to give. They show a guy here studying. This is something that a black-owned ad agency would do. The guy is studying, and he's doing it with his Pepsi. Here's Coca-Cola. It's the real thing Coke. Well, back in the early 70s, yeah, you could find pictures like this, but it wasn't that common. Because in some parts of the world, they still had extreme segregation, as we still do in some parts of the country today. Colgate. And the last one I'll show is Gulf, because it's aspirational, and it shows a college graduate, and mama, we did it. It could have been a UNCF ad, right? Or a Thurgood Marshall scholarship fund. Back then, of course, Thurgood Marshall didn't exist. But you know, because whites control most of the advertising in this country, just a few months ago, I want to show you a commercial that ran, and it ran a lot on sports. And I happen to watch a lot of sports, and I was personally surprised that they ran this and a little offended. You judge.
Hold on. I lost my wallet. My credit card was in it.
You do have a Capital One no hassle card, don't you?
Well, don't worry. There's not another human for miles.
Worried about losing your credit card? With Capital One's no hassle card, you're not liable for a penny. Plus, get the nation's lowest long-term fixed rates and no telemarketing.
Yeah, somehow it seems like they're trying to equate African Americans to monkeys in that commercial. That's what offends me. And you saw the African American looking like he was up in the tree over the shoulder there. That's what bothered me. And I'm personally offended by it. It's not on air right now. A guy named Bud McCullen, he's worked for the Hunter Miller Group in Chicago. He's an 18-year advertising veteran, black-owned ad agency, Hunter Miller. He said, these images are being served up by non-African Americans who are unfamiliar with the sensitivities and stereotypes black people face. Change won't occur until African American advertising executives and agencies play a larger role in what is presented to the public. I'm going to make a comment about that at the end of my remarks. But you certainly don't have to be African American to do good advertising that works. I want to show you a commercial now that was the very best commercial ever in the history of the Super Bowl as judged by the public. And the person featured in this commercial is a football player with the Pittsburgh Steelers. His name is Mean Joe Green. That's back when the Steelers had the best team in football, the Iron Curtain, Steel Curtain. And Mean Joe Green was one of the hardest hitters in all of football. He kicked butt. And in this commercial, because of that meanness, that his reputation of being such a bad guy and such a tough guy, this commercial really worked.
Mr. Green?
Yeah.
You need any help?
Mm-mm.
Want my Coke?
No.
Really, you can have it.
Okay.
You had to kind of be around in that era to know the reputation of Mean Joe. So seeing the soft side of Mean Joe actually resonated a lot for white folks who felt, you know, hey, maybe they're not all that bad. Bottom line is advertising reflects society. It doesn't necessarily create trends, but it can highlight trends. It can highlight thoughts. And if you see an image often enough, you begin to buy it. Images have a lot of power. We need more blacks, more Latinos, more other ethnic groups in advertising. That will ensure that the subtle sensitivities that we have are reflected in that advertising. Otherwise, it won't be reflected. You'll get more Capital One commercials. I want to show you two TV commercials that were recently created by black ad agencies. The first one's for Pepsi.
You got lost again? We in the wrong place, man.
You can't throw a hot party out here.
Ludicrous, say dirty side. Yeah. Wait a second, man. Turn my mic up a little bit, man. Oh.
Let's bounce. Ain't nothing going on down here.
Yeah, Pepsi.
Oh, man, it's all your fault, man.
How you think it's my fault? You driving? And there ain't no girls within miles ahead.
You know how we do.
Yeah, I thought it was kind of cute because, you know, things like that can happen. And this one is the newest commercial featuring Irvin Johnson. Do you remember, you guys old enough to remember when he announced to the world that he is HIV positive? It was unbelievable. Everybody at my company, I was at Miller Brewing then, ran into the conference rooms and watched this. It was unbelievable. It was earth-breaking, and we all thought, black and white, that this was the end of his endorsement career, that it would just peter away, but check this out.
Dad, that's clean.
Looks good, huh?
Come around here and check it out
All right.
That's smooth, right? You like that?
Yeah.
Check the big boy out. Navigation system. I like that. Beautiful leather seat. The seats are just real comfortable. See that? Hit that. Oh, okay. Huh? That's how I scored. You look good in the car. For sure. I look good in this, I think. You do. So tonight, I think you should let me get the keys. No way. No.
The 2004 Lincoln Navigator. Travel well.
Yeah, what's interesting here is this is like a $50,000, $60,000 car. And it's very prestigious, it's luxury, and it's not aimed just at black folks, by the way. This is on general market TV. So I thought it was interesting. Irvin Johnson is back full force. You know, he's a tremendous business success. He's done some work for my company, and I'm very proud of what he's achieved. He's got 32-story office buildings in LA. That's the last thing he did. He bought 3 or 4 big buildings in downtown LA that he owns. And I had dinner with him in a restaurant on the top floor of one of those buildings that he also owns, the restaurant. So he's doing extremely well. Look out for his future ventures. The last commercial I'll show, then we'll maybe do some Q&A, is a commercial for Walmart. You might have heard in the news a few weeks ago, the city of Compton, California, rejected the construction of a Walmart in their city because people were afraid it would close up the small stores, the shops, and so forth. Well, to help try to sell the idea, Walmart came up with this commercial. Just goes to show that all commercials don't have to necessarily sell a product. Here, Walmart's not selling anything. They're trying to get the community to accept the fact that they want to build a store in their neighborhood.
Here in this part of LA, our community's been overlooked by a lot of organizations, but when Walmart came in, they let us know that they care. Walmart has revitalized this corner. They've moved into a building that had been empty for over 5 years.
They've brought jobs to the community.
They've given to a lot of the programs that help our youth.
They've brought a sense of respect back to the area.
Walmart has done so much for my community because they're here. We've got a new sense of hope.
The mayor was even in favor of the Walmart, black mayor. It's a black town, black city, Compton, almost all black. The mayor was in favor of it. This commercial is a pretty good commercial. You know, it's got a certain amount of persuasiveness, but the town still rejected it because at the end of the day, politics is local, and the way people feel it's going to affect them is the way they're going to vote. And they voted it down when it was put up as a referendum in Compton. I want to close by making a couple of comments here tonight. All of you have an opportunity, a tremendous opportunity. And I would say it doesn't matter whether you're in the advertising department or working for an ad agency or not. If you work for a company and they do advertising or brochures or anything else that has images of us that doesn't feel right to you, you have an obligation to speak up. Take it to the president. Take it right to the top. They will appreciate it. I'm telling you, they don't have the sensitivities you do, unless they look like you. And they need to be aware of what you feel and why you feel that way. And in fact, even if you don't work at the company, write a letter. Send them an email. It's amazing. When I worked at Miller, you know, Miller has this big spotlight because we were huge spenders. And when we did commercials that even a small portion of the population found offensive, well, we would judge how offensive is it by seeing what kind of reaction we got from the public. Well, if no one's complaining, keep running it, was the mentality. And I'm telling you this because it's the way it works. Now, if a company is nervous about it, they might do research that shows a lot of people don't like it. But generally, what they react to is a written letter. It might only be 10 or 15 letters they get. 10 or 15 letters is a lot for most advertisers. 10, 15 letters saying, hey, I'm not going to buy your products anymore unless you take this off the air or change this, or I want you to explain the attitude you had when you wrote this. You know, if you do that, you'd be amazed how powerful your influence can be. Keep in mind that just a few years ago, we had zero control over advertising, and the result was a disaster. You saw some of those ads I showed you, and they're a lot worse than those. I didn't pick out the worst ones. So you have that responsibility. I want you to know that the images that you see in magazines and newspapers, that you hear on radio and in television, have an impact on everyone who's exposed to them. It has an impact. That's why they keep coming. It obviously is working on many different levels, okay? It's selling product, it's introducing new things, it's explaining a point of difference, a benefit, a key attribute, a lifestyle, it's making a promise. But if it does it in a way that isn't appropriate, we have a responsibility. We need to speak up, write, make a phone call, whatever. Thank you all very much. I have one other special thought here, if you don't mind. You know, Raisin in the Sun is back on Broadway. Raisin in the Sun, starring Sean Combs. And I heard from several reviews that he did extremely well in his debut. And I have people in the office who have seen it, and they say he really did a super job. It's a great cast. The whole cast is terrific. Of course, Sean is new on the stage. He's raise your hand, I'll recognize you. Back there, young lady with the white shirt. No, it was before that. Yes, ma'am. No. Sorry? No, it was after that. Yes, sir. Back there. No. Back there. No. Close. Who said 61? All right, you got it. Come on up here, young lady. I don't have the tickets with me. What I want you to do, you write down your address and we'll mail it to you. You got time. It's June 16th, okay? Make sure I get that back to you tonight. You got time? Okay. All right, that's great. Congratulations. You know, I was talking earlier with the entertainer, and he and I were agreeing that when people receive a gift, they have an obligation. So when you see that production, you might want to turn it into a paper or something. That's the way it works.
Join us for our annual summer trip to ancient Egypt, July 24th to August 7th, 2004. This trip includes a 4-day, 5-star luxury cruise up the Nile, luxury hotels, and shopping. We'll visit the pyramids and the Sphinx, the temples at Abu Simbel, the Valley of the Kings and Queens, and much more. Our tour leader is Dr. Clinton Crawford. For more information, call 718-756-8904 or visit www.sankofaworldpublishers.com.
In the sanctuary of learning, minds and space merge in a tranquil setting. Glass, air, light, and space for intellects to grow, that blossom seeds of knowledge, unfolding in a contemplative world of books, reading, and information, sturdy, steady, and strong, creating success one student at a time. Medgar Evers College. Come and learn.
We have time for a few quick questions if you want to do that. Yes, sir.
I'm certain, like most of us, you saw the Donald Trump game or whatever they were playing there. There's this big debate out there as to whether the behavior coming from the young lady that now everybody's mad with was in fact script or she just messed up. I would like to hear you comment from a position of someone who I think would have some idea as to how the media deal with situations like that.
Well, you know, my expertise is not the content of the program, it's more the commercials, but I'll say this. I know from TV commercials how you edit can push things one way or the other. So I do believe Amoroso did some things she probably shouldn't have done or didn't do some things she should have done. But it became magnified through the way they edited it, okay? Because how do we know at the moment she's modeling this hat that her cell phone was ringing at that same moment? Do you know what I mean? That's editing. They put those two pictures together, side by side, to make it seem as if the phone's ringing, she's busy fooling around, having fun. We don't know the details of that, and quite frankly, it's unlikely we'll ever really know unless you get close to the producers, you know, the folks who were actually on the set, on the location. But I do think it's a little bit of both, because that's what you do in programming. You want to make it entertaining. The way you make it entertaining is you push the human drama in whatever direction you can. You know, we did it when I was with Miller. We did Miller Lite commercials with like Bob Lanier. He had big feet. Well, the truth is his feet were no bigger than anyone else's, but somehow, you know, that was the reputation he had, big feet. His feet were actually 19, he had size 19 shoes. Okay, that's big. Hey, but for NBA, that's not big. He was in the NBA, he was a center. There were a lot of people with 21, 22 size. You know, for his height, 6'11", he had a 19-inch foot. Now, we did Miller Lite commercials that played off the fact that he had big feet, and it was like an ongoing joke. It was all innocently done, but I explain that to you because that's the way things are done. You find a little tendency for something to be a certain way, and you explode it. And that creates drama and interest, and that's how it works. Yes, sir?
You remember that Budweiser commercial with the frogs?
Yes, I do.
What do you thought of that?
Well, I'll tell you what, they did a whole lot of commercials with critters. They had frogs, they had lizards, and I thought it was clever. I thought it was different, and it worked because they wound up continuing a sales trend that was very positive, and it hurt Miller, their arch competitor. That whole series of commercials they did with the lizards, the alligator, the frogs, the ferret, and going back, way back, they had Spuds McKenzie. I don't know if you remember that. They did a whole lot of, I stayed away from adult beverages because I know there are a lot of freshmen that might be in the class, so that's why I didn't have any of those commercials here. But the beer commercials sometimes are the easiest to talk about, the most fun. And, but I thought it was effective advertising because they were going after a different audience than normal. Here's the thing. Bud Light did that, not Budweiser, Bud Light. And before that whole campaign, and before Bud Light started doing that kind of clever, relatively young humor, the way the beer category worked, people drank a regular beer. When they got a little older, they drank a light beer. Well, what Budweiser did was very clever. They got people to go from being minors and not drinking at all directly to Bud Light. Not going through Budweiser, directly to Bud Light. Meanwhile, Miller had drinkers going to Miller, then Miller Lite. So we were getting them older. They got them when they first entered the beer category. Your first beer, a lot of times with the research shows, 30 years later, that's still your favorite beer. So you got to get them when they first start drinking. That's what Budweiser did with that Bud Light campaign. When I was in advertising, the 4A's had a program to create internships. The 4A's is the American Association of Advertising Agencies. And all the big ad agencies are members of that. And what they did, they had an intern program. And every summer, they would specifically focus on African Americans, Hispanics, and Asians to bring them into advertising because they, all they do is look around the office. It's all these white folks. Back in my day, it was white men, okay, white men creating advertising for everybody else. So I actually wound up chairing that department. I took it from 9 interns to 69 interns. And I blew it up real big. And you know what they wanted to do? They wanted to open it up to everybody. Women, Asians, and Hispanics. And I let the Asians and Hispanics be in there because they were underrepresented also. But I insisted that we not take our eye off the most important segment at the time. The largest segment by far was African American back then. And I wanted to make sure that the numbers in our intern program reflected society. Because a lot of times when you have these so-called minority type programs or diversity type efforts, there's a tendency to include a lot of different racial groups, and then we get minimized, okay? So be very careful about that. And in advertising today, for example, because of some of those early efforts, it's become much more female. So the women are taken care of now pretty good. They're not as often in the presidential level, although there are several of them, by the way, several. But they don't have enough in the middle ranks and the art directors, the copywriters, the account managers. You don't have too many African Americans there, less than 5%. That's absurd. And there's several industries that are very low in their representation of us. Advertising is one, journalism. I think journalism is changing a little bit quicker. But there are, who writes the textbooks that you read? Are you aware of that? The textbooks most often are not written by us. The textbooks that capture our history. It's good to be a history major. We need to write our own history with our perspective, with the sensitivities that we have because of the way we were raised and the experiences we had. No one else can capture that. That's on us. We have that obligation. We have to do it. I think Clean was first, and I'll go to you.
Mr. Hankin, you mentioned internships. I don't know how many students here have actually interned at a company or organization. How important are internships in a college student's life? And when you were in college, did you have any internships that you were part of?
When I was in college, it was a different world. I never really had a plan to go into the business world at all. I decided not to go into business. So I didn't intern in the business environment. I stayed away from that. And I took other jobs. I was director of the Neighborhood Youth Corps program in Queens. That's the kind of stuff I wanted to do. And I felt committed to helping my neighborhood, my community, my people. That's what I wanted to do. Today, it's a different world. You not only need a bachelor's degree, you really need an advanced degree, but you have to have experience to even get into some of the B-school programs. And one of the best ways you can get that experience is an internship. And quite frankly, when we look at candidates who are recently out of college, we don't hire right out of college. We hire people who might have 3 to 5 years experience, minimum. What we look at is the sum of all their experiences. And if they've had some really great intern experiences, that's counting for us. That's very valid. It's very valuable. It shows that they know what they're getting into. What you don't want to do is put someone in a position where they might fail because it's so new. It's just totally like what I went through. My first day on the job, I was like thrown in there. The truth is, I didn't say this before, but the truth is they were looking to hire black folks. I wasn't qualified. I was not qualified. I had a college degree in sociology. I had never taken a single business course, not one. But they hired me because they wanted pressure from the federal government, because people like H. Rap Brown were saying, hey, that whole industry has